My name is Ashlyn Smith, and today I'll be presenting my final project for ARC 602, a hurricane recovery facility located in Western North Carolina. This project explores how a single building can serve both daily community functions and critical emergency relief, offering safety, infrastructure, and recovery support in the wake of extreme climate events. So looking at this, I wanted to select hurricanes as a disaster to focus on because of their increasing severity, unpredictability, and inland impact. Climate change has extended storm influences far beyond the coast. Flooding, high winds, and infrastructure collapsing now remotely affects inland states like North Carolina, that we'll be talking about later. Research shows that inland regions are unprepared for long-term displacement and resource shortages caused by hurricanes. This facility is a response to that gap, designed to be resilient, adaptability, and self-sustainable through integrated systems, durable materials, and configurable programming. So those are things that will be considered further and will be explained with my design. Western North Carolina, especially areas along the Blue Ridge Mountain, face significant risk from storm remnants, landslides, and infrastructure failures due to increased rainfall and topography. The mountainous setting informs both program distribution and structural strategies for my design site. And when I began looking at North Carolina, I began looking at Hurricane Helena, for example, and seeing all of that damage that occurred, and wanted to gain inspiration from that hurricane and that location of that hurricane. So the region was decided and chose based on that location due to the elevated base on access, runoff paths, and even community needs. So beginning looking at the site and not only what is needed, but how the site was even affected, and also looking at the possibility of if this were to happen again, flash flooding, thinking about tree coverage as well as slope support. So thinking also about passive cooling, solar access, and stormwater management was considered, as well as the users that will be within the site and who would be coming into the site before deciding on the final site selection, which the final site selection was selected for its natural drainage, slope adaptability, and regional accessibility, which will be explained further in the views. This site offered the flexibility needed to stage disaster operations while also remaining accessible to impacted population. So really looking at that whole analyzation. Also, topography played a huge critical role. The building is orientated parallel to the slope, which will be explained later, to reduce excavation and leverage natural drainage. So a pile foundation will actually lift the structure to allow stormwater and debris to pass underneath with minimal impact due to that large slope you're beginning to see in some of these views, which will be explained later. The site reflects like a layered access. So I began looking also at like the service roads and what would be considered for supply and emergency responses. Also looking at pedestrian routes for daily uses, the stormwater channels, feeding like bioswales and also retention beds. So really looking at that and how my site within the community could be very well used and effective, thinking about adjacencies to other buildings, as well as main traffic and transportation flow, and beginning to look at proposed site plans for this to allow for parking, also community use, and then even shipment and handling to come in during these moments. Looking away from site and now more with concept, the design began with 3 core strategic moves. And these are now not moves that were started here, but really just thinking about an elevated structure, something that would be playing with the mountain versus going against the mountain, and that overall slope that was beginning to be shown, as well as allowing it to almost create a very simple and unique flow within the building. As I began developing more, I wanted to mirror the spiral form of a hurricane, so shaping the massing to reduce wind pressure and also symbolic embedment movement into the architecture. Secondly, I also wanted to look at elevating the structure as a pier system, which I explained before, just allowing water and everything to flow underneath it due to landslides being so common. And the third design process was also the function of like every day, what is something unique and also very different to the environment and where you would want people to continue to visit. And that's where I began developing this concept of a sweeping structure and curved structure. From these structures, the architectural form evolved into that curve and continued to develop into a sweeping structure that follows the site's slope while enforcing the wind inspiration geometry, geometry and circulation zones. So wrapping around the central core and extending outward into patios and exteriors, and also thinking about a spiral geometry, helping also soften this transition between public versus semi-public and private zoning, making the program very simpler and more open to allow not only connection, but also community growth during and not during hurricane uses and hurricane support. I also really wanted to look and navigate into design strategies, so looking at resilience, materials, sustainability, thinking about ways that I could begin looking at passive design solutions, as well as like global interactions. So during hurricanes, what can we be doing within our building to help with this connection and this interaction with people outward. I also began looking at several precedents, which informed this design, including disaster relief centers, elevated health facilities, and storm resilient schools. Strategies such as like adaptable programming, open air circulation, and off-grid energy support were translated into their projects, and something that I wanted to take and continue with into mine. So now as we begin into the overall design development, the exterior highlights a mix of concrete structure and also fiber cement panels, and also thinking about recycled aluminum cladding, even a possibility, all chosen for this resilience to like moisture, wind, and heat rather than local connections. But with this main entry point, I wanted to highlight that curve and continue to highlight that curve, and also think about south-facing windows and how that will eventually connect back to the site and allow for passive usage. Looking more at the overall floor plan. So each level represents something different, and then also how it connects and will begin to adapt based on hurricane relief, and why I picked what I did based on the floor plans. Like I said before, programming is in the sense of private versus public, but also thinking about the central hub as this open plane to do anything you want with, and then everything else wraps around it to create this very unique flow and connection throughout the building. So looking at level one, obviously you'll have the main lobby, you'll have the cafe and even exhibit spaces. I wanted to make sure that this floor had a lot of open and large spaces, because during hurricane relief, this would actually transition into a more resource-based floor, so allowing for food distribution and also other resources to be distributed out of the building for people who are of need of it. And that's why also shipping and handling is so close within this building, as well as office spaces, and they would be the ones coordinating everything and reaching out to people who were in need of it, and also being in touch globally with hubs and people that are sent to help and continue to help with them. And then looking at another exterior view on level one, this is the back patio. Again, seeing how the building begins to flow and move within itself to create this unique mimication of a hurricane and the centralness of a hurricane. And then also even looking in the interior element of this main central hub and beginning to see how this is the main importance of the building, and how this center is where everything goes and everyone can see and everything can happen around it. Looking at level two is mostly focusing on education and office spaces. This is mostly going to be kept during a hurricane system, just to make sure that temporary classrooms and also people are able to access education purposes, and children are able to continue to learn, as well as having office spaces and conference on this floor. I view the office spaces, they're larger and hold a lot more opportunity. So I wanted them to also transition into like a shelter opportunity so people can stay and actually be able to stay within this building until needed or until homes and other resources were coming about. This is an exterior view of another pathway and how I wanted to begin creating these pathways around the building to allow for exterior use and another connection with indoor-outdoor. Here's another view of that main central hub within the second floor and beginning to look on how that looks compared to the lower floor, and then also looking at the section cut and begin analyzing it from the slope. And as you begin to see, the building will slope off and allow for rain off and rain to go underneath the building, but then also looking at the structure and how it will begin to go down based on that pile foundation that I talked about earlier. Level 3 is more focused on wellness and admin kind of functions. So thinking about all the office spaces and wellness within a hurricane situation, the wellness would stay, but it would transition into more of a physical therapy opportunity for people who possibly were injured or were hurt during this time. And then this other side of the floor with the offices would transition into almost medical solution or medical offices to treat people who were injured or are recovering from the damages of the storm. And these are just some elevations to begin to see each view from, this is north and south view. So just beginning to look at the building on the sense of the side views. And as you begin to see like the curves going inward and continuing this circular motion and layering on top of each other, kind of like a hurricane. And then fourth floor, this is primarily all office spaces and also in innovation and multi-use spaces. This was used and will be used during a hurricane as like staying rooms, like the second floor, and resource spaces, so distribution spaces, and to allow people to stay within this floor, and also keeping in mind privacy. So having this all the way up on the last floor to give people that privacy and also to allow people to feel comfortable within the space if other people are using and a lot of people are within this space during a hurricane time. This is the exterior view of the walkway on the fourth floor and beginning to see that unique center that the walkways create. So having that same effect of a central point with the exterior walkways and a central point with the interior. And this is an interior view of the fourth floor. Again, viewing that main central hub and outward of office spaces and also that connectivity with the exterior. These are some more elevations looking at west and east side. Again, just showcasing not only the exterior walkways, but also how much is able to be seen inward and connecting back to nature and allowing people to experience the environment. So looking more in the sense of structure plans, the structural system combines reinforced concrete piles, a concrete core, and a steel movement frame. So the vertical core anchors the building while pile caps and floor diaphragms work together to resist wind and somatic forces. Structural walls double as not only a thermal mass, but also stabilizing indoor temperatures and also support massive performance. So thinking about it in the sense, and then also wanting to have a lot of fun within like the fiber cement panels and creating them in a sense that not only mimics possibly another hurricane, but even the terrain and kind of building more in to the terrain, as well as thinking also about glazing. So allowing for glazing to still be within the structure, but how are ways that they could withstand hurricane, and that would be like the hurricane impact rated glazing. And looking at those kind of strategies and also being able to tuck away the glazing and put it on sides of the building that make the most sense, not only with site, but possible climate changes. And then this is another section cut, just looking at how that building will begin to sit on the train and then going through, and also just like the structural supports and overall egress circulation that's happening within the building. And then progressing now to technology and innovation. So really beginning to look at the use of solar panels on the roof and then providing renewable energy as well as like a green roof, which insulates and slows stormwater and supports biodiversity. Also looking at water harvesting, so collecting and storing water for water reusage, supporting roads and cleaning and irrigation purposes. Also thinking in terms of technology of building monitor systems, so tracking wind pressure, humidity, making sure all of the airflow is overall and well strategized. Also thinking about a lateral and vertical core on both sides of the building, thinking about that in like a structural sense. And then also thinking about how to incorporate so a clear story. So like I said before, like the main central hub and thinking how that could possibly allow for ventilation to happen and open stacked like vestibule to happen. Also thinking about operable doors and windows with the exterior walkways. This allows for a very unique passive cooling system and beginning to look at that as well. And then also thinking about like south facing strategies and the location of windows, but also solar panels and renewable energy and harvesting systems located mostly on the south side, just due to that impact from the sun, and also thinking about shading devices and also glare effects on that side as well. And then looking more at like an environment standpoint, so looking at how the site is elevated and allowing for water to go under the site, like I said before, and then having panels on the roof as well as reusable. It's kind of like a repeat from the technology side of things, but it's still important in thinking about exterior patios. And like I said before, like south facing and clear stories and backup paneling and how that would be supported. And also thinking about the green roof and possible food distribution within people who are needing of it. And then in conclusion, this hurricane recovery facility is not just a building, it is a resilient system, a community anchor, and a transformative tool for disaster resources. It adapts to a crisis, support long-term recovery, and remains functional and durable in the face of uncertainty. Rather than resist nature, it works with it, mirroring winds, following the slope, and collecting every drop of energy and water it can. It is a building that stays standing, keeps serving, and supports healing. Thank you for your time.